I'm really glad we decided not to record last night during the Lions game, especially with the Red Wings playing at the same time. And, it was the roller coaster happening in real time with the Red Wings, coming back and then blowing it. And then the Lions started to look really good. And then you got that feeling like, oh no, it's going to happen in both games. I wasn't ready for that. I just wasn't ready for it. I don't think my sports fandom or my heart could take it. I was just like, oh God. But the funny thing is, and here's the kicker from my story. When you have kids and you instantly start becoming friends with the parents of your kids' best friends. So my daughter's friend that, or the new friends that you start making them like around kindergarten, preschool. And so the parents of her best friend, one of them's an Eagles fan and the other's a diehard Cowboys fan. So after all that rough and tumble last night we went and picked up my daughter at school and we're talking, I'm talking to the mom, the Cowboys fan mom, and her and my wife are talking. They went out tonight for dinner. And I was thinking, like, I'm not going to see anything. She walked away. She was getting into her car, and I yelled out, "Hey, Andy." Her name's Andrea. We call her Andy. I said, "Hey, Andy, the Cowboys." And that was it.
Welcome to the Flying Octopus Podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabrin.
Hey, it's Carter Bear, and you're listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast.
Welcome to episode 63 of the Flying Octopus Podcast. I am your host, Evan Sabrin, joined by my co-host, Devin Little. Episode 63, the Joachim Anderson version. That's a name from the past and not a very big one, but Devin, thanks for reminding me on that one.
Yeah, if you recognize the name Joachim Anderson, you might be entitled to financial compensation.
On today's episode, we'll be joined by one of our favorite guests and one of my favorite overall guys in the hockey industry, Shane Malloy from Sirius XM NHL Network Radio. He's dropped in to give us all the latest news on this Quinn Hughes situation that is taking the hockey world by storm. A lot of different stories, rumors out there, and we wanted to get someone out here who really is in the know about it all. We're also going to discuss something that I've been thinking about for a while here, and I want to discuss the narrative that the Wings really lack a true superstar. We hear it all the time that they don't have this generational talent, and that's why they can't take the next step. I'm here to tell you, I think they do. And in fact, I think they actually have two generational superstars. So I'm excited to break down the numbers on that. And then after that, Devin's pretty excited about this. We have the Winter Olympics coming up in 2 months here, and Devin's going to make a case for Alex Debrincat. I think we're in a place right now in the Red Wings season where we can say that Alex Debrincat could be considered one of the Red Wings MVPs with the season he's having. And, Devin wants to argue that point, and I'm not going to argue with Devin for that. I'm all about that too, because I think Debrincat could be a really vital asset to Team USA. So guys, we're going to do something a little bit different here on today's show. Watching or listening to this podcast, I have no doubt that you watched the Red Wings' last two games versus Columbus and Boston this week. We're not going to come at you with the same thing that we other podcasts do, where we're going to talk and complain and bitch about the goaltending or the defenseman, Travis Hamonic. And we're going to try something a little different here because the doom and gloom it's not fun. And it feels like we're beating a dead horse here, coming up with the same thing. So we're going to try to make, let's talk about something a little more fun and something that's a little more upbeat. So that's what we're going to go with today. So we're going to start off with Shane Malloy from the NHL XM Sirius Radio, and I hope you enjoy this interview. All right, now we welcome in our favorite guest, who also happens to be the very first guest we've ever had on our show. He is someone who I've been fortunate to spend time with at the last two NHL drafts in Vegas and Los Angeles. This man has done it all in the hockey industry as a columnist, author, a scout, a data analyst. He has been the host of the Hockey Prospects radio show on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio for the past 21 years. He authored the book, The Art of Scouting. He was also the predictive data analyst for EA Sports NHL franchise for 17 years. He's done it all, like I said. He's also an admitted Cleveland Browns fan, which we'll get to later. But most importantly, he's a good guy who is always very generous with his time to help people who are getting started in this business. Because, like I said, he's seen it all. He's someone I'm very proud to call a friend. He's Shane Malloy. Shane, I can't thank you enough to join us here on this short notice. I know you probably have a busy week with your shows and these rumors that are flying around. So I really appreciate it, friend, and I'm glad to see you.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Anytime. Happy to come on. Yeah, it's a little bit. It's been a little bit chirpy, I guess the word I would use, back and forth. Funny thing enough, about 10 days ago, I was actually less than 2 weeks ago, I was in Vancouver. So I caught a couple games there. I caught the Dallas game and the Calgary game. So I got to see the person we're going to talk about, Quinn Hughes, up in personal for a couple games. He's business as usual. I think what's ended up happening is the Vancouver management had sort of painted themselves a little bit into a corner in the fact that, like other star players, no different than what Connor McDavid pretty much did to Vancouver. Or Edmonton, I'm going to give you 3 years. Let's make this happen. Quinn Hughes is in a similar spot. He's looking at the team around him. Obviously, he loves his teammates, but he looks at the caliber of the team and this isn't a Stanley Cup contending team. Now, how long is it going to take for us to get there? And unfortunately, whether he knows or not, Vancouver has a porous track record in drafting and developing. I mean, it's abhorrent how bad it is. Like from 2006 to 2020, 15-year period, first 15 years of salary cap era, they're probably only going to produce 15 players that'll play more than 200 games. Won a draft. That's last. That's dead last in the NHL amongst their peer groups. So, and there hasn't been anything that I've seen of late that changes that. So that means there's no push from below. And he's also smart enough to understand when all the teams around the NHL have started locking up all their young players for long term, there's almost nothing coming on the free agent market. So even if Vancouver wanted to go and test the market free agency, their only secondary players are going to be available. So then it's drafting, developing, or trades. But if you don't have the assets to make trades, you can't make those subsequent trades to improve your team. But if you don't draft and develop well, not only do you not get players, but you also don't have assets. Because no one wants your bad prospects. Nobody. So look at Vegas as an example. People said, oh, Vegas didn't build through the draft. I'm like, well, actually, in a certain way, yes, they did. Because they drafted so well, they allowed themselves to trade off those prospects for high-end players. So if you don't draft well, nobody wants your crap. It's just a fact. So Vancouver's in a really precarious situation where they have one centerman who isn't playing up to his standard and nobody behind him. So you got to fill that void. And then you're missing, I'd say, a second line winger that you have to have, a top six winger to miss a second pairing defenseman. Hopefully, if their goalie could ever stay healthy, that would be great. So, and they're missing a couple centermen and then a whole prospect pool to push from below. So I can understand if Quinn Hughes had reservations or concerns about the direction of that franchise, which is why there has been a tremendous amount of discussion and scuttlebutt about him potentially being traded.
It's crazy because, the narrative is that generational superstars don't become available very often, such as Quinn Hughes. The two teams that we've seen strongly him tied to the most as far as rumors, we don't know what's true, what's not, but it's playing with his brothers in New Jersey. We've also seen the links to the Detroit Red Wings because his family is from the area. He played college hockey there, the national development team program there. Parents live in my hometown, Plymouth. Go Plymouth, quick plug. But what are you hearing as far as what's the likely scenario? Because New Jersey and Detroit aren't the only two teams that are going to be calling for Quinn Hughes. What are you hearing? Where do you think his best fit is, and where do you think he ends up?
Best fit is going to be with an up-and-coming team, a team that's has enough assets to make a trade that doesn't deplete the franchise completely, because otherwise you're just back right where you started. So he's going to look at organizations. Okay, do you have enough young talent? If I'm traded there, it's not going to deplete the roster. So New Jersey, even though his brothers are there, it's actually an obvious choice because they have a lot of young assets. And if I'm the Vancouver Canucks, I'm asking for Simon Nemec, I'm asking for Anton Siliev, I'm asking for a first, and then I may ask for something else. Now, there may have to be a smaller move underneath just because to move some salary, but certainly I would want the top two defensemen. Now, I know people are familiar with Simon Nemec because he's now playing in the NHL as a rookie, and he's starting to turn the corner. He's very, very young, so not a surprise that he's had some ups and downs, but certainly you're going to see him, I think, as a top pairing defenseman. For the people who don't know who Anton Siliev is, he was drafted 11th overall by New Jersey. He's 6'7", and he's mobile. And I don't mean mobile for a big man. I mean he's mobile. So basically, how I would describe him is a Siberian troll with a hook club. He's mean. He's angry. It's like he just escaped from a gulag out of Russia, and he's a unicorn because nobody that big should move that fast, and he's mean. Now, is he a player that's going to produce points? No. He's probably be in that 25-point range, but it's irrelevant because what he does is he's a deterrent. No one's ever going to want to go on his side of the ice. If you go in front of the net with him, he's going to just club you to death. And he's the type of defenseman that you could put with a Simon Nemec for a decade and just insulates him. And there's your top pair for 10 to 12 years. So if you're the Vancouver Canucks, that's a necessity because what that does is gives them those two defensemen, plus they have Tom Willander and they have Elias Pettersson, the defenseman. So there's your top four right there. And you start building around that. And all your other draft picks become forwards and subsequent D, but at least you have that core. So that's New Jersey. Detroit, if I'm looking at them, and if I'm Vancouver, I'm going, well, okay, I want Pelika on defense, and then I'm going to ask for most likely Nate Danielson and a first and something else. Or, and maybe, I think about maybe Marco Kasper and a first. Even if Detroit doesn't make the playoffs, I don't care. Like, you're not protecting it. We're taking the pick. And there might be something else in that too. Because if Detroit wants to retain, obviously, Seider and Evanson and then throw Hughes in there, there's the three-headed monster on defense. And that takes care of them for another decade. But you're going to have to give to get. So it'll have to be Danielson, Pelika, a first, and something else that goes that way. Because this is a Norris Trophy defenseman. He's one of the best defensemen in the league. So, and Detroit hasn't had that, obviously, since Nick Lidstrom retired. So that would be a massive change. And Detroit has accumulated enough young players that I think they could pull this off without completely depleting their roster.
How much of a problem is it that they can't negotiate a sign and trade with him yet because he's not eligible to sign his new deal till July 1st?
I think it'll be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge deal. Okay, we can't officially sign this, but the agent and the general manager are going to go, okay, let's write this down on a napkin. What do you want? It's 7 years max, 12, 13 a year. I don't think it matters, honestly, for them. So that to me, and this has happened in the past, so this isn't new. It'll be buried until July comes, and then all of a sudden July 1st comes along and it's free agency, nothing's really happening. All of a sudden Quinn Hughes has been, extended for 7 years at $13 million a year. That's what I think will end up happening.
Are the Canucks in a bad situation here with knowing that he wants out? And is that going to affect the return that they may get that we're talking about?
No, only because he's still under contract. So a team is going to get him for this playoff run and another playoff run, depending on, obviously, if Detroit made the playoffs, if they hypothetically traded for them. I don't think that's the end of the world. There's going to be multiple teams. I think they lose a little leverage, but there's enough teams out there. Like, don't discount Anaheim. The Anaheim Ducks, they're loaded with young players. Like, if you wanted to add a piece like that, like if you look at their defense core, they don't quite have a Hughes. Now, they have some really good defensemen, Jackson Lacombe and Mintiuk. Like, there's some really good young defensemen that are there, but they don't have a Hughes. And they have all these young forwards. So if I'm Vancouver, I'm going, okay, I want Mason McTavish. I want one of your young defensemen, probably Pavel Mintiuk, and I want a first-round pick, and I want something else. And if I'm Anaheim, I'm like, that's the price we pay for that. Because they haven't had a defenseman like that since Niedermayer or Pronger. Basically, he's their Niedermayer again.
I remember you talking about, and you can go into this further, about Anaheim and their drafting and developing, and they're one of the best teams out in the NHL with their drafting and developing of players. They have stockpiled a young nucleus. You mentioned Lacombe, Mintyukov. You still got guys like Tristan Luneau, Stein Solberg.
Stein Solberg is another guy I would actually target too. Honestly,
he is a monster.
Well, no, he was one of the most funnest interviews I've ever had going into the draft and at the draft. He's a throwback. He's like a Kevin Bieksa, honestly. And that's another defenseman if you're looking at. So if you go take a Mason McTavish and a Stein Solberg and something else, say it's a first, what that does is it changes the complexity of the Vancouver Canucks. Now you become a club. And I mean this in the most complimentary way. You're getting two bastards. And teams winning. Look at the Florida Panthers. What are they loaded with? Those kind of players. Like, you got to change the trajectory of what this franchise is in Vancouver. So, even if you're looking at Detroit, go back to Detroit again, maybe it's Danielson is the right fit for them because he's more of a Bo Horvat two-way centerman. That would probably be a second-line centerman. Can be a bit of an insulator for Elias Pettersson up front. But then you got to take, you need the offensive defenseman, and you're going to need the first-round pick and probably maybe even something else. Like, it's a high price that they're going to have to pay.
And Vancouver and Jim Rutherford were huge fans of Nate Danielson heading into that draft. I do remember that, reading a lot about that. So I think that could be a fit. This week on our show, and Devin gave a hot take because what we see all over in Detroit sports media, social media, is that you need to do whatever it takes to get Quinn Hughes. But I think it has to be the right deal for a team like Detroit because Steve Yzerman has, he has sold this thing that he is going to build for the long term for a team that, he doesn't want to just get into a couple postseasons. He wants to build that long-term team that he was part of in the late 80s and early 90s and through the 2000s. So, Devin took the stance that, if you're giving up an Axel Sandin-Pellikka, a Casper, we think it's going to be one of Axel Sandin-Pellikka or Simon Edvinsson they're going to ask for, or Casper and Danielson and multiple firsts. Is it worth, you think, to, create another hole in the roster to bring in a guy like Quinn Hughes? Or do you think that the Steve Yzerman is a guy who's going to stay the long-term plan with these prospects that he's built up, and then maybe make that move for a trade maybe down the road when this team has seen more success? Because right now you got 3 rookies playing in this lineup every night on a nightly basis. And so there's still a big growing a learning curve. This is a growing year. I still think that's why the Ilitches are doing this Fedorov retirement thing and all the other things they have planned. This is the year that we're going to start, initiating the kids into the NHL. So I'm curious, do you think if you're Steve Yzerman, do you throw out like, a big portion of chunks of guys that you hope would be part of your future for Quinn Hughes?
Yes. When do you ever get a chance to trade for a player like Quinn Hughes? When? It's almost never. Like, honestly, it's almost never. Now, the Detroit Red Wings have been accumulating a lot of first-round picks and a lot of players. It's unfortunate that their second-round picks haven't worked out because I think their lack of success in the second round has been a contributing factor of why they don't have the depth right now. Go back and take a look at their, from 2017, 17 on, how many second-round picks they've had and how very few of them actually have produced. And that's where you get those really good third-liners and a number 4 defenseman and sometimes even a number 3, but generally not. Like 4 and 5 defensemen, your entire third line generally comes out of there. Sometimes a second-line center. That's those 4 players that you need in the middle, and they just don't have as many of those. But again, how many times are you going to keep drafting in the top 10 and wait and wait and wait and hope that a Quinn Hughes becomes available? Like, I think they're at a point where they can afford to do it. They can afford to do it. And it also changes how Detroit looks. So if they don't lose Edvinsson and they don't lose Seider and they add a guy like Quinn Hughes to the blue line, if I'm a free agent, I'm going, I want to go there. Like, because you win with your defense. And then they have a bunch of young goalies coming. So what happens with Kosa? What happens with Augustine? Like, they still have their goalies sitting there. And that may be something that Vancouver looks at. Maybe it's like a centerman, a defenseman, and the goalie that go, and they don't lose the pick. Honestly, for Vancouver's case, they're better off taking the prospects and not choosing their draft picks on their own. So, but also for them, to getting the centerman is because they have Braden Coots coming too. So that could be Pettersson, say it's hypothetically Danielson and Coots. There's your 3 centermen. And then you just added like an offensive defenseman in Pellikka, which doesn't entirely replace Hughes, but, partially replaces Hughes in that respect. And you got a guy who can play right away. So if I'm Yzerman, I make the trade. And I don't know. I'm a prospect guy. I love prospects. I love picks. Give me as many as you can give me. But at the end of the day, how often do you get an opportunity to trade for a player of that caliber? It's really rare. So, and it may not happen as often in the future. So that would be me. I think they've been sitting around for 8 or 9 years collecting draft picks and prospects. Sooner or later, like they either all got to come to fruition, and if they do, then you're going to trade some of them away for a player. But I think there's going to be some pressure. He'll handle it fine, and it won't be any pressure on him. But he's going to look at that opportunity and go, okay, is this our Nick Lidstrom of this group? Because we don't have that. Snyder's an exceptionally excellent defenseman, and Evanson's going to be he's a horse. But Hughes brings something that those other two don't, and he brings a dynamic that they don't. And they don't have. I mean, Pelican would be like a poor man's version of Hughes, even probably in his prime. He's going to be a really good defenseman. Really good defenseman.
Best case. Yep.
Yeah, but is he going to be a Norris Trophy winning defenseman? I don't know about that. But I certainly would draft him, and I'd certainly want him on my team. So if I'm Yzerman, I'd be okay with sacrificing 2 players, like those 2 players, and probably a first and something else for Hughes. And then give him whatever money he wants. Who cares?
Well, yeah.
Cap's going up. You'll be fine.
That's not a question.
Hypothetically speaking, if the Red Wings were to make this trade, regardless of what the pieces are, do you think that them adding Quinn Hughes puts them at that next level to where we can talk about them like as a different status of team in the grand scheme of the NHL?
Puts them into the playoffs. This is where they haven't been for 9 years. That's what it does. He'll drag him into the playoffs. He's just such a difference maker. And what it does also as well is he becomes instantly your number 1 defenseman. So now Seider's your number 2. And it pushes all the other defensemen down a rung, right? Into a place where they probably should be. It would actually be far more effective. So there is a tumbling effect that ends up happening like that as well. So just don't look at him in a player. Now Seider becomes a 2. And maybe Evanson's a 3. And then, so when you're starting to build up that defense core, you already have your 1, 2, 3. It's so much easier to go find yourself a couple 4s to round it out. And then at the end of the day, in tight games, at the end of games, you're trying to get a goal or you're defending the lead and you throw out Seider and Hughes out there. Who's going to get around those guys? It changes how their whole defense looks by adding him without taking away Evanson or Seider. Because I would rather keep Seider and Evanson and give up Pelika if I had the choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just because when you put those 3 defensemen together, that could end up being in a couple of years the best trio defenseman in the league. Yep. Right? Because then Evanson becomes similar. Remember in Chicago when they were winning? So they end up having Duncan Keith and Seabrook, and then had Yarmulson as that 3, and who was that hardcore defenseman that just was like the glue. That's what Evanson could end up being, just a much bigger version of that. So, and that's, you sort of look at it in that roster construction viewpoint.
And then I guess my last question would be kind of the reality check. Because I know when you were talking about the potential package Vancouver could get from New Jersey, I know I was sitting here thinking, that's pretty good. I think I'd think long and hard about that myself. Prediction time, I guess. Where do you think the best fit for Quinn Hughes is?
Jersey, with his brothers. Personally, I mean, if I'm thinking it from his perspective, it's New Jersey because he's with his brothers, and they're a playoff team, and he'll push him. He'll push him to the top of that division, and they would be dangerous. Like they're dangerous already, but they would be dangerous. So you can't make mistakes because they're going to destroy you in the transition game. So, however, Detroit would give them a really interesting package. Because Pelika and Danielson and a first and something else, you'd be hard pressed to not take that. Because I think Danielson at the end of the day will end up being very similar to Bo Horvat. So if you're adding a Horvat and maybe plea becomes like Hronek to Vancouver. So you're adding another Hronek and a Horvat and a first round pick.
And it would all come full circle, seeing as Yzerman and Rutherford dealt Philip Hronek for the pick that ended up turning into Axel Sandin Pellikka.
Yeah.
And
how does that like that?
Kind of,
and that would be, and the Vancouver fans would go bananas over that. So they're already frothing at the mouth in Vancouver. It's when I walked into the rink, it was palatable, the angst that was going on of like what's going to happen. And then they lose to Calgary, which didn't help, and they lost to Dallas, which didn't help. And they're a sinking ship right now without Demko being hurt. They don't have a chance of making the playoffs. They may be staring it right down the barrel and going, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what do we, because Hughes is going to say all the right things. He's the captain, and obviously he has a lot of pride, and he wants to prove that he can help this franchise win, but also there's going to be an opportunity in front of him as well. And he's going to do the right thing. He's always said the right thing and does the right thing. So, again, I think one of the other things that we haven't talked about at all is Detroit or New Jersey, whoever happens again, but say it's Detroit for your fans, is you just traded for a team captain. How does that leadership impact your room too? It's not just his talent on the ice, but how does he impact the room as well? Like, that's a big leader coming into your room. Like, that's an alpha dog. That's not just some talented player. Right. Yeah, and it takes some weight off Dylan Larkin. It takes a little bit of weight off Dylan Larkin. And, because Hughes can say, hey, man, I've been there. I've been here. I've been on a team where, we missed the playoffs quite a bit in my tenure. We made it, but we missed too. So I get it. So he doesn't have to shoulder the load all by himself. He has another leader walking into the building. So,
yep.
Yeah, if I'm the Detroit Red Wings, I will do what I can to make that trade happen. Because he's like Quinn Hughes is a special player.
And he'll have all his Michigan boys there too, because he's friends with Larkin and the Comfers and the
right. No, man. It'll be just like coming home, right? He'll look at that too. Like, I think his first choice is always going to be with his brothers in New Jersey, but the second best choice is Detroit, I think, for him. Family, he knows the organization, he knows the area, he's got friends on the team. It's just an easy fit right into that. And it's original 16. Who doesn't want to go play in Detroit? Right? The building's fantastic. The fans are like great. It's a historic franchise. The owners spend. Like, they're not afraid to spend money. And they treat their people right. So, when you go to Detroit, and this is like, it gets talked about behind the scenes of which franchises do things the right way. And Detroit's one of them.
Well, Shane, I can't thank you enough for doing this, especially on short notice. You're the best in the business. Great friend. Appreciate everything you've done for me as far as, taking me under your wing at the drafts. I look forward to picking your brain again at this year's draft. Whenever I find out it is, I'm going to come there and, we'll wrestle it up and get it done again. But I appreciate it, Shane, and this was really fun. That was great, man. Like, I love that guy. He's just a wealth of knowledge, and he can talk forever. I always tell this story because he's so connected in the hockey world, and you wouldn't know it until you actually hung out with him. But when we were in Vegas, when I first met him, we were walking somewhere on the strip. I'm not even sure where. And we're talking, podcasting, prospects, whatever. This was before the draft had actually started. Don Sweeney comes up and says, hey, you mind if I borrow this guy for a second? And they went off on a different walk down the corner, talking about God knows what, because, he can't tell me. But he's got the ear of a lot of NHL GMs. So when he comes on and, gives his opinions and thoughts, like, dude, he's legit. Yeah. He really is legit. And I could listen to that guy all day. So check him out on NHL XM Sirius Radio for the Hockey Prospects Radio, because he's pretty good. There's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and it's one of the things that you always see about the Red Wings, the narrative, my favorite word nowadays, is that the Red Wings lack a superstar. They don't have a generational talent. That's always been said. The Red Wings need to go out and acquire one. They weren't lucky enough in the drafts to draft one of these players, but I just don't believe that. And I think there's, I think there's two players on this team that maybe aren't to that level yet, but they are trending in a very strong direction to that level. And that's going to be Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider. So I wanted to do a little comparison. And so I was, playing with the numbers this week and looking around. One comparison I've always heard with Lucas Raymond as far as career trajectory has been Nikita Kucherov. So I went up and I looked at the numbers. They're not, they're somewhat of the same type of player in that, they're not overly physical. Kucherov's probably a little more physical than Raymond, but they're about the same size. They're not going to blow by you with speed, but they play the game with smarts. They both have excellent shots, and I wanted you to look at the numbers. We can agree that Nikita Kucherov is a generational superstar, can we not?
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the numbers this week, and this really kind of sticks out when you really break it down and look at it. Lucas Raymond, his age 19 season, his rookie year at 19 years old, 57 points, 23 goals, 34 assists. Lucas Raymond's age 20 season, 17 goals, 28 assists for 45 points. Look at Kucherov's age 20 season, 52 games, 9 goals, 9 assists, 18 points. Kucherov's age 21 season, 29 goals, 36 assists for 65 points. Age 22 season, 30 goals, 36 assists for 66 points. His first 3 seasons in the league, 149 points for Kucherov. And let's not kid ourselves, that's how you base a superstar these days, on what the kind of points they put up. He's an Art Ross Trophy winner, but when you look at Raymond's numbers, his first 3 seasons, he's outscored Nikita Kucherov. He had 174 points. I think there is the trajectory where Lucas Raymond is going to be a superstar in this league. He's already on pace for a 90-point season this year. And like I said, looking at Kucherov's numbers, it's Raymond's way ahead of him as far as points in those years growing up. And let's not forget who Nikita Kucherov played with. He played with guys like Steven Stamkos, setting him up on his line. I'm curious, do you see that kind of same trajectory, Devin? Because Lucas Raymond, when we talk about that draft, with Lafreniere and Quentin Byfield and Tim Stützle, I'm still if we're going back to that draft, I'm still taking Lucas Raymond over all 3 of them. I really am. And I don't think any 3 of them, points wise, none of them. Stützle might have more points because he was in the league a year before Raymond. But where do you agree with me on any of this? Do you think that he has the potential to be a superstar? Because he's going to hit 90 points this season if he stays healthy, I believe. And at age, he's 23 years old? I mean, what are your thoughts on Lucas Raymond?
Well, I really like him. He's been somebody that I've been pulling hype trains for since the Red Wings drafted him. And I think that to some extent, I've always kind of had the thought in the back of my mind that Kucherov comparison, it definitely holds some water. There's something to it. But then to kind of have the numbers put in front of me, I'm actually really glad that you decided you want to talk about this, Evan, because I already liked Lucas Raymond. I think my hype level with this player is about to reach another level. No, and the thing about it too is I kind of want to reiterate a point you made. Nikita Kucherov, not to take anything away from him, he obviously was a phenomenal player and is a phenomenal player. Really, from the get-go in his career, he joined a team that was a Stanley Cup contender. His second season in the league, that's the year that they went to the Stanley Cup final and lost against the Chicago Blackhawks. Lucas Raymond hasn't played a single playoff game. They're just different calibers of teams. And to see that Lucas Raymond is still outproducing Kucherov, it's crazy. And I think that if we really broke it down, I think Kucherov was playing on Tampa's second line in the old days, whereas Raymond's playing on the top line from the get-go. But regardless, that just means that more eyes are on Raymond. He's on the top line. He's facing the toughest competition on a nightly basis, and still producing the way he has. This is a phenomenal topic because it's one of those things where, and I don't want to get too far in the woods here because I know we're going to talk about Seider in a second here, but Lucas Raymond might be the most underrated superstar in the NHL, because anyone who watches the Red Wings knows how good Lucas Raymond is. Dylan Larkin is the guy that gets talked about in terms of the Red Wings. It's Larkin and Patrick Kane more often than not, I feel like. But Lucas Raymond might be better than Dylan Larkin. Like it's debatable, but it's definitely like you can make a good argument for it. And he's probably going to outproduce him this year. Maybe it's a hot take, but I think Raymond's going to score more points than Larkin. So if Larkin's a star, because I think we can agree with that. He's like a star player. I don't know if he's a superstar, but he's a star. I think Raymond's better than him. What's the next level from a superstar? An all-star is a superstar. Yeah, I'm with you, Evan. If he's not a superstar, he's on the precipice of becoming one, and it's just a matter of time before everyone else is just kind of echoing what we're saying here today.
Yeah, and I kind of saw that on Twitter this week. Like people, when it was mentioned that, I think some things got taken out of context, and people were mentioning, would you give up Lucas Raymond in the Quinn Hughes deal? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think Lucas Raymond is here to stay, and while Quinn Hughes is generational, again, I still kind of still sit with your theory, and I know what Shane just said, but I'm 10 years. What's another year for me, man? I'm in for the long haul with this team. You know, I mean, growing up with those amazing Red Wings teams that were great for so long was something that probably won't happen again in our lifetimes or a lot of teams' lifetimes. It's rare. It's an anomaly to be in the playoffs, let alone be in the hunt for so many years like the Red Wings were.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in this for the long haul at this point. You know, I think Lucas Raymond will be a legitimate superstar when you look at his age, you look at his numbers, and you compare those numbers to other stars who have succeeded in this league. Just because he's not the Connor McDavid, the flashy, fast, or Connor Bedard, whatever, that doesn't change the fact that sometimes it takes time for someone to develop into that superstar. And I think that he hasn't shown us anything that tells us that he won't. He is a very smart player. Like I said, he's not the fastest, he's not the flashiest, but he has an amazing shot. He is very smart with the puck. You rarely see him make mistakes. So I'm a huge Lucas Raymond fan. And again, that's superstar number one. Now let's get to superstar number two, because I think this star is even bigger, and that is Moritz Seider. And if you listen to our show, you know that I'm the president of the Moritz Seider fan club. I have been a fan of him since, I can't say since the day he was drafted, because I know the reaction. He was probably just as surprised as all of us were when he went number 6 overall. I remember I was actually sitting in the exact same seat I'm sitting in right now when I watched that draft with my friend, a Canadians friend. I said, what the, I was like, Turcotte was there, and Cole Caulfield and Zegras, and dude, it didn't take long for Red Wings fans, especially now in the day and age of social media, to warm up to Seider, with being able to see all his games over in Europe and then with Grand Rapids. Let's face facts here. Seider is a very, very special player, and you cannot tell me that if you interviewed, all 32 GMs in the NHL, if they want to start a franchise, if you want to start a team, you can't tell me that Seider is not one of the top 10 players you'd want to start your team with. The guy is a horse, and he's having, in my opinion, a Norris caliber season. On top of that, he plays a physical two-way game. He is durable. He's Iron Man streak. He hasn't missed a game since he started playing in the league. I think he's at like somewhere around 356 or something now. By the way, looking at that, I was surprised Debrincat's like at 402 or something, which is crazy to me. I didn't, like, you never really hear about Debrincat being like an Iron Man, but Seider is a beast. He plays the most meaningful minutes. Again, he's physical. My comparison to Moritz Seider, and I think when it's all said and done, and I'm probably going to catch heat for this, is Chris Pronger. I really think it is. I think at his age and where his game at, Moritz Seider's game is at, I think that's way ahead of where Pronger was at his age when he played. And the numbers back it up. I mean, offensively, listen, Pronger was not like, he wasn't a big, huge points guy. He broke 60 points one year, I believe. And I wrote that down somewhere. I believe his workaround. He broke 60 points once. That was in 1990-2000. Seider scored 50 points his rookie year at age 20. Again, very similar playing styles. Pronger 6'6", 220. Seider 6'2", 210. So the size is there. The physical toughness is there. And Pronger missed games. Seider doesn't miss games. He doesn't miss games. And you throw him out there every night against the opposition's best players. You look at it right now, Simon Edvinsson and Moritz Seider are one of the top pairs defensively in the NHL today. I think he's a beast. I think his game's only continuing. It's getting better and better every year. And you can rely on him offensively. You can count on him on the power play. Like, what's not to love about Moritz Seider, and not to say that he also, in my mind, he is a superstar, but in a lot of people's minds, he's not. What's to say that he doesn't become a Chris Pronger type like person? Because Chris Pronger, when he first came out, and he started with the Whalers, and then he didn't really peak until, like, I don't know, a couple years into his Blues career, to where he was, recognized as this Norris type trophy, shutdown defender. Now, obviously, Pronger fought a lot more, but times are a little different here in the NHL. And, Seider just had his second fight last week with Kastelik in Boston, which didn't go so well for him. But you can count on this guy to be out there every night for 22, 23 plus minutes, and he's seen those kind of big minutes. He's doing it at such a young age. I consider Chris Pronger a superstar. He's a Hall of Famer. First ballot Hall of Famer. Kucherov will be too, like we talked about with Raymond. What's to say that Moritz Seider's career is not ascending into something bigger than what Chris Pronger was?
And the thing about defensemen too is that they typically take longer to hit their prime or hit their peak. So as great as Seider has been for the Red Wings, I would say there's definitely room to at least hope that there's another level for Seider, which is crazy, because I also agree with you. I think that this is probably the first season, and again, it's still relatively early in the season. This is the first year where I think Seider's going to get Norris votes. Like, he's having that good of a season. I think I think he's having that much of an impact, and I think that I think that this is partially what having a good year from Ben Sherratt does for Moritz Seider. It's also what having Edvinsson and Sandin Pellikka, inconsistent from game to game, but when they are on, they've both been really good. And it just having that depth, having that support to where Seider doesn't have to carry the defense by himself, it kind of allows him to shine even more. And I think that that's what we're saying this year. That again, even just having a good partner in Sherratt this season is doing wonders for him, I think. And as for what it's worth too, you look back at the 2019 draft. If you look back in hindsight, you're like, who'd go first overall in that draft? It's really only a discussion between two players, just like 2020, where it's like it's either Stützle or Raymond. In 2019, it's Jack Hughes or Moritz Seider. I think that.
And what's the biggest difference between those two players?
Which two?
But what's the biggest difference between Jack Hughes and Moritz Seider, as I just talked about, as far as durability?
Well, yeah, exactly. Jack Hughes is I mean, crazy accident, right? But he's sitting out games right now because he broke a glass into his hand. Like, Moritz Seider's never missed a game, and I mean, you don't want to hold stuff like that against a player, but it's not just that. Yeah, like you said. Hughes has definitely, I don't know that you can fully tag him as injury prone, but he's working his way up to that label. And I'd rather have the, bona fide top pairing, sturdy defenseman that you can count on for a decade plus. Because as good as Jack Hughes has been, I feel like we still, whenever we really get to see peak Jack Hughes, he gets injured. So, anyways, I'm not trying to get too far down this. Jack Hughes is a fantastic player, right. And I look forward to the day when he is signing his free agent contract to join Quinn Hughes in Detroit, of course. But until that day comes, it's a good debate between who should go first overall in that draft. And I do like the Pronger comparison. I remember the Blues defenseman I always heard in the months before and after the Seider pick was Alex Pietrangelo. And I still see a little bit of that too, but I think I see Pronger more. There's just that little extra physicality. I think Pronger was a bit more physical than Seider is. Also just a different era of hockey. But even just I don't know, I think Pietrangelo's offensive ceiling at his peak was higher than what I think Seider's is going to be. But just in terms of their leadership, both Pietrangelo and Pronger were leaders at different points in their careers. Both were leaders. Both were, top pairing defensemen. Both were intimidating defensemen for different reasons. And I think Seider kind of fits that mold too. I guess to kind of now talk about the topic in whole here real quick. I think that this is maybe the biggest reason why I'm not as worried about the Red Wings as some people are, because I fully agree with this. I do think the Red Wings do have superstars. I think that they maybe don't get the right publicity. They don't get enough publicity. Maybe the PR in Detroit's not as good as it should be. But also there's something to the fact that the Red Wings have been losing a lot. Since they've been in the league. Jack Eichel was Jack Eichel in Buffalo too, but nobody really cared because he was in Buffalo. And now that he's in Vegas, everybody loves Jack Eichel. I'm sure if Lucas Raymond magically teleported to Tampa Bay or I don't know, Toronto, one of those teams, all of a sudden everybody would be talking about how they love Raymond. But until the Red Wings become the team they want to be, I think this is just kind of the reality of the situation. That the average fan doesn't follow average teams. They follow the good ones. And until the Red Wings are there, they're not going to get the recognition that they deserve. And then even then, they still might not get the recognition they deserve because there was, I'd say, a 3 to 5 year span where Pavel Datsyuk was the best player in the NHL, but nobody talked about it because Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin were there too. And that doesn't take anything away from the fact that Pavel was that good. But then you also look at his point totals. He never had a 100-point season. So if you look at, 100 points or something like that as like a threshold of this player is elite, this player is the best, this player is generational or whatever, Pavel Datsyuk pokes a hole in that because he never hit 100 points. But he was the best player in the league for a good, decent amount of time. And I think that just kind of speaks to how Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond can be superstars, even though they're not recognized for it, because they play for an organization who's, for better or worse, always kind of muted their best players. Some players are just so good that they're hard to mute. But in a different organization, Pavel Datsyuk might have hit 100 points. But he played for the Red Wings, so they really focused on his two-way ability, and he still put up 97 points on a regular basis. Like that's a phenomenal player. I think that's what we'll see of Lucas Raymond. I think Moritz Seider will probably never win a Norris Trophy unless he takes another significant leap. But that doesn't mean he won't be like Jacob Slavin over in Carolina, where everyone knows he's one of the best defensemen in the league. He's just not Cale Makar or he's not Quinn Hughes. He just doesn't produce the same amount of points. Point production isn't everything when it comes to superstardom. It's obviously a significant chunk of it, but that's why that's why you got to watch the games, right? If you're only relying on point production, you're going to miss the fact that these two players we're talking about are as good as they are.
I don't think you have a player who has the durability, the toughness on the ice, and the offensive game. His offensive game has evolved. I mean, he quarterbacks the power play. He quarterbacks the first power play, and he's pretty damn good at it too. Mm-hmm. So, to me, I always get frustrated when I hear that Red Wings need a superstar, Red Wings need to go all in and all this, but just let this thing breathe a little bit. I know it's been 10 years, but the hole that Ken Holland put this organization in for so long, it took time to dig out. We're seeing the fruits of that labor. Things are only going up with this organization. They're not going down. Yes, it's frustrating. Yes, the goaltending is just downright awful, to be honest with you. There's not really another way around it. Yes, the bottom pairing defensemen have really struggled this season, but when you look at how it's building and how it's coming, this is being set up for long-term success. That's why I agree with you. That's why you had that great hot take on Twitter yesterday about maybe not let's go all in. Maybe a Marco Kasper, a Nate Danielson, and Axel Sandin Pellikka, all three of them together are worth more than a Quinn Hughes. Now, I know a lot of people won't agree with that, but all in all, not one of those players is better than Quinn Hughes, but as three separate players who could have very good NHL careers, and it looks like they will, maybe that's not worth one superstar like Quinn Hughes. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
I think before you buy a boat, you got to buy something to tow it with. I think getting Quinn Hughes, depending on the cost, is buying a boat before you have something to carry it. You haven't built the whole thing yet. But, yeah.
It's a boat. All right, switching gears here now. That one's for you, Tony. I know Devin, you want to talk a little bit about the upcoming Winter Olympics? We're only 2 months away, and this ice situation is getting pretty scary. If you're following the ice in Milan there in Italy, doesn't look like it's up to par yet. And I know Bill Daly said this week that if that ice isn't ready, these NHL players aren't going. Having said that, rosters will be coming out shortly here, and there's a player on the Red Wings that, Devin, you're pretty passionate about, you think should be on the USA's team roster, and that is Alex Debrincat. Why do you think that he should make Team USA?
Well, first and foremost, I want to start this off by saying the fact that this is a topic and the fact that this is like a debate, I think really speaks to just how far USA hockey has come in the last 10, 20 years. The fact that there's a very decent, I'd even say high chance that Alex Debrincat is left off of Team USA's roster. A player like that won't make the cut. That's crazy. That speaks to just the wealth of talent that will be available to Team USA. When I was younger, that wasn't the case. It was Team Canada, it was maybe Team Russia, and then Team USA had some good guys, but they couldn't match up to the star power of Team Canada. Now it's crazy. Now to get to kind of the main topic here. Hey, Evan, can you guess among US-born skaters this season, where does he rank in goals?
I was told there'd be no math today. in ranks and goals in what? In all-time U.S. goal scorers?
In the NHL this season specifically, among U.S. skaters. He has 14 goals.
Does Cole Caulfield have more than him?
Cole Caulfield has the exact same amount, 14.
Are those the two leaders?
They are not the two leaders. I'll tell you right now, Jason Robertson's the leader, so you know he's at first. Yeah.
Is it so? What he's second or third?
He is tied for third. There's 3 players at 15, and then there's a few guys at 14. Alex Debrincat is in that group with 14. All right, now we're gonna do what? Now we're gonna do points. Where do you think Alex Debrincat ranks in points amongst U.S.-born skaters?
He has a lot more assists this year.
He sure does.
He really does.
He has 29 points. Just to throw that out there.
I'll say second.
Not quite that good. He is ranked 4th. 1, 2, 3
for U.S.-born skaters.
Sorry, he is 5th. My apologies. He is 5th amongst U.S.-born skaters. Also, kind of a similar situation with the goals, where he's tied with a few guys. He's tied with Matthew Boley. He's tied with Cole Caulfield. He actually has the exact same stat line as Cole Caulfield. It's kind of funny because similar players. He's tied with Zach Werenski, and he's tied with Troy Terry in terms of points. Jason Robertson leads U.S.-born skaters in both goals and points. I think he's going to make the team. But anyways, my point here is we know Debrincat's had a really good season because we watch the Red Wings every night that they play, right? But I think that I don't know that the average fan knows how good of a year Debrincat's having, and even like amongst his U.S.-born peers. I think that when it comes to this topic of whether or not Alex Debrincat deserves to be on Team USA, I quite frankly think he does. Because I think he's a scorer, right? That's what he's always been. And then to your point, Evan, he's really he's upped his assists this year. He has more assists than goals, and honestly, that's pretty rare for him. That's him putting pucks on net and then somebody putting home the rebound. That is him passing off to his buddy Patrick Kane. That's him, holding on to the puck for that extra second to allow a lane to open up. He's playing. This might be his peak. I think this is the best he's looked as a Red Wing. I think this might be the best he's going to look in his career. And if not now, when is Debrincat going to represent Team USA? I think that if you're looking at a debate between maybe Cole Caulfield and Alex Debrincat, because like I said, similar players, both small scorers, I'm going with Debrincat there, not because I talk about the Red Wings all the time, but because he's older. Just a little bit more experience in big game situations. Remember, he did play with the Chicago Blackhawks right at the tail end of them being competitive. So he at least has some experience in those situations. Whereas Cole Caulfield is still a little green. Obviously, the Montreal Canadiens went to the playoffs last year, but just a little different, I think. Debrincat has over 400 consecutive games in the NHL right now. It's crazy. But it's really going to come down to just the wealth of talent that is available to Team USA, like I said off the top. And then also, I always kind of, when I think about this, I always think about that scene from Miracle, or at least that quote from Miracle, the movie Miracle, where they're I don't remember exactly what leads up to it, but he goes, "I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones." It might come down to
That's
that
a good
because
pull right there. That's a good pull right there. I like that.
yeah. Because Debrincat, I think, is unquestionably one of the best players out of out of the United States right now. It's just a matter of whether or not he's the right fit. You're going to want to have a checking line in the Olympics. You're going to want to have some good two-way players that can play on both the power play and the penalty kill. You're going to want to have players that obviously have elite offensive skills. You're going to have players that have elite defensive skills. It's why Dylan Larkin's like a shoe-in for the roster. He can play in all sorts of different scenarios. If there is a spot for Alex Debrincat, I think he's done enough, by December 5th to earn a spot. But it's going to come down to how Mike Sullivan and the coaching staff want their team to look, really. And of course the brain trust Bill Guerin and his associates in the front office. It'll be interesting to see, but for my money, Debrincat's earned a spot on the roster. What do you think, Kevin?
I think he has too, and I think it could come down to a numbers game. I'm looking here at the preliminary roster here, and you got guys like Matthew Tkachuk, who's going to be out for most of the season. Brady Tkachuk, who's coming off an injury. They even have Patrick Kane listed on the NHL.com website as like making the preliminary roster. I don't know that happens. JT Miller is not having a good season. Austin Matthews is going to make it, but he's not having an Austin Matthews type season as well. Clayton Keller, Jake Gensel, Jack Hughes. Well, I think Jack Hughes will be healed up in time. You definitely have to take him as he's one of the marquee names. Kyle Connor, Matt Boldy. There's definitely a spot for him on this team. And especially when I look at some of the other possibilities, like a Chris Kreider or Brock Nelson or Vincent Trocheck, Cole Caulfield, as you said, I think Debrincat's name is definitely in the mix. And I think with the way he's been playing, he's making people notice. And I think he's going to make it a very tough decision down the stretch because let's face it, this USA roster is freaking tanked this year. I mean, this is a loaded roster. It's a wagon. Look at the defensemen. Now, Adam Fox is out now, but Brock Faber, Adam Fox, Noah Hannafin, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Jake Sanderson, Slavin, Werenski. And that's not even talking about Lane Hudson or Luke Hughes. Goalies, the goalies are tandem is strong too, although Connor Hellebuck is hurt, but you still have Jake Ottinger and Jeremy Swayman. But looking at that forward group, looking at those names, Alex Debrincat's name fits in those categories of some of those players that are going to be on that roster. And I think he has proven that this season more so with his play. And like I said earlier in the show, that you can make an argument that he is the Red Wings MVP at this point in the season, the way he has played. I'm a huge Debrincat fan. I think he's always beat the odds. I think he's always beat the stigma that he's too small to play in this league. He's not. He's proven that year after year. Obviously, we're as Red Wings fans, I'm gonna always, have my recency bias, but Debrincat's a player. He is, and I would love to see him on Team USA. And if I had to say it right now, I would say he deserves a spot. And as I repeat myself again, if he's going to make it a hard decision for the USA roster coaches, he's going to make it hard for the coach not to put him on that roster. All right, my man, starting to wrap here, but before we do, Devin, you got your news and notes for this week, and some interesting stuff going around the NHL. Hit us off.
Yeah, and I guess no better way to segue out of the Debrincat Team USA talk than to talk about the status of the Olympics, right? Just not too far away now, and we're still talking about whether or not the ice or in the arena is going to be ready. And it's becoming definitely a situation where the NHL has their eyes on it. Bill Daly recently quoted saying, "If the rink's not completed, no NHLers will be going to the Olympics." Obviously, this is something that the players, fans, everybody really have been waiting for over a decade now, right? Like it's been a long time since NHLers have participated in the Olympics, and this is supposed to be their first time back. And now something frivolous or something stupid, really, like and a rink not being ready could potentially derail that. And I think that's crazy. I think that this is even a situation that is happening. I don't understand how it happens. Somebody should be fired, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, it might be a non-issue. Maybe, as we in the final days before the Olympics launch, we're cleared for takeoff. But until then, I guess we're going to be kind of kept on our toes. Evan, what are your thoughts on this crazy situation?
And I always have the weirdest takes about this stuff because I love Olympic hockey, and I had a chance to follow the U.S. team in Vancouver and see them live. And the atmosphere, the time I had, I always say if I could go back to one weekend in my life, it would be that weekend in Vancouver for the gold medal game. I love it, but at the same time, there's this little thought in the back of my head that always comes up when John Tavares broke his leg and missed the rest of the season with the Islanders back in the day. Like, you imagine if Raymond or Sider went down, or Larkin or Debrincat or Kane or any of those guys, that would just be deflating. But again, the impact of Olympic hockey, and I understand growing the game, nothing beats Olympic hockey. It's great. It's absolutely fantastic. The excitement, the playing for your country, it's second to none. But it is kind of concerning how much time they've had to take care of this issue. And now we're 2 months there and they're still not on, they're not on pace to have this ready. Like, that's kind of scary. It's a little worrisome. You're seeing all these funny memes on social media now too, of people just making fun of the situation. But it's definitely it's something to keep an eye on, but also like, what's going on here? This is the Olympics. So
apparently not. Apparently it's a clown show. But regardless, pulling it back into the NHL sphere here, kind of a significant injury to report here. Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars is out for this season with a significant injury. Obviously, Tyler Seguin has been in the league for a while now. It's actually kind of jarring to think about how long he's been around. And they did Taylor and Tyler, Taylor Hall and Tyler Seguin. He's in his 16th season in the NHL. I'm old. Obviously, he's not the same player he was 10 years ago. He's obviously he's been kind of filled in more as like a middle six kind of guy for Dallas in recent years, but still obviously a significant loss for a team that is by all means expected to be a Stanley Cup contender and be one of those teams that's expected to give Colorado a run for their money this year in the West. Evan, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is going to be a setback for the Stars in any way?
I mean, I don't think it's a major setback. Like, he's still an effective player, but like you said, he's not what it once was. Also, didn't he play for the Plymouth Whalers? I believe he did play for the Plymouth Whalers.
So. Yeah,
first draft year back when they had those hometown. That's 2 Plymouth shout-outs in one
Plymouth
show.
Whalers.
That's awesome. I think the Stars will be fine. I think he's been customary to a secondary role on that team now. They've got their stars and Ranton and Robertson. I'm not worried about that team down the stretch with him. But yeah, I mean, from a locker room leadership role, maybe so. We've heard a lot of stories about Tyler Seguin and some, not always on his best behavior, especially those Boston stories are the best ones I like. And if you don't believe me, Google them because they're pretty interesting. But I think the Stars will be fine without him. But hey, Plymouth Whalers, shout out.
If nothing else, it was great to get that in there, right? And then finally, bringing it back into Red Wings land, former Red Wing Igor Larionov, obviously known as the Professor, turned 65. We here at the Flying Octopus Podcast want to wish the Professor a happy 65th birthday. Obviously, a key part of the Russian Five. Maybe a little special feelings around wishing him a happy birthday this year, given that Sergei Fedorov is going to be honored. Another member of that Russian Five as well. But I know I went to that the Fan Fest thing a few weeks ago, where they, a lot of the alumni were on stage and shared stories. It was hosted by Kim Daniels and Mickey Redmond, and it was, first of all, really cool just to hear from everybody and see everybody. Larionov was definitely one of those guys that I felt like a lot of people kind of wish he could have made it. He wasn't able to make it, but felt like he would have had a story or two to share, especially during the Russian Five panel that they had. But yeah, happy 65th, Igor. Hope you're doing well, and hope Hope you're still teaching lessons, Mr. Professor. What about anything you want to say about the professor, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that he was probably the most underrated member of the Russian Five, but you cannot deny his impact that he had on those cup-winning teams. And even if you watch the documentary, it's talked about like how he was, the final missing piece in that Russian Five, and just the way, he came over when Russian players were coming over back then. He came over a little later in his career, so he was a little older, kind of like Slava Fatizov. But the mentorship, they talked about when we talked to Keith Gave, him and Slava Fatizov, and what they meant in that locker room to the younger Russians while they were growing up in the league cannot be understated. The Russian Five, I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. And now I'm probably going to watch that tonight on Netflix when this is over, because it's one of my favorites. But yeah, happy birthday, Professor.
Real quick, actually, just now that I'm kind of recalling FanFest, Brandon Shanahan shared a fun little tidbit while they were talking about Fight Night at the Joe. On the bench, this is maybe the underpublicized part of Fight Night at the Joe. It was Igor Larionov fighting Peter Forsberg that like started everything, basically. Shanahan was talking, and there was a moment on the bench where Larionov kind of turned to his line mates, Shanahan, and I forget who the other one was, but he basically said, "All right, enough of this. I'm going to start something." He used some language we can't say on the air right now, but basically he was like, "All right, we're going to do this," and he went out there and started stuff with Forsberg, and then the rest is history. It's just kind of funny that the professor, known for his methodicalness, was the guy who was like, let's fight. Let's get this out of the way. Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny.
That's the other thing I loved about the Russian Five too, is when they talked about the Russians when they all got together, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they like to have fun at their dinners. They like their vodka and have some drinks." I mean, I always thought like, man, it'd be great to be a fly on a wall to see those guys go at it, because like I said, the Russian Five, man, something special. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for episode 63 of the Flying Octopus Podcast. Red Wings, a 6-game road trip continues on Saturday in Seattle versus the Kraken, and the team heads to Vancouver on Monday to face Quinn Hughes and the Canucks. Wouldn't it be great if they came home with Quinn Hughes on the plane? Oh, wait. Then it's back-to-backs with Calgary and Edmonton on Wednesday and Thursday. So we'll be back on Friday with our latest edition. A bunch of games to talk about for the Flying Octopus Podcast. Quick reminder where you can find us. Give us a follow on Twitter at Flying Octopod, and check us out on YouTube at The Flying Octopod. And you can also listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Evan, fun show today. Always love talking to Shane. Good times. We're going to see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.